Olá, seja bem-vindo, seja bem-vinda a mais um episódio do podcast Preciso, Saber, o podcast da Academia Judaica. Esse podcast é para quem tem perguntas, porque no judaísmo, mais importante do que respostas é fazermos as perguntas certas. Temos sempre vários convidados muito interessantes e que nos contribuem muito com o seu conhecimento. E hoje não é diferente disso. Esse episódio será em inglês, porque temos uma convidada internacional. Vou apresentá-la para vocês. Hoje a nossa convidada é Galeet Dardashti. Ela é uma voz singular no judaísmo contemporâneo e quando eu digo singular, não é só no sentido simbólico, mas também literal. Ela é antropóloga, musicista, compositora, educadora e ativista cultural judaica Mizrahim. Ela lidera o grupo Dayan e cria performances como The Name e o recente álbum Monajat. Ela também tem um podcast de muito sucesso chamado Nightingale of Iran e pesquisa profundamente como a música, o corpo e a memória constroem identidade, especialmente entre judeus do Oriente Médio e do Norte da África. Vamos começar a conversa? Galeet, thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
Thanks for having me.
And for being here today with us. So I'll start asking you, your work lives in the space between voice, memory, and identity. So what do you think you inherited through sound? What songs, silences, and voices shaped who you are?
Thank you for that question. Well, I am very lucky to have come from a family where I basically, once I was born, I came into this musical family. And I performed professionally with my parents and my two sisters growing up. We, sang international songs and Jewish songs and all different music from around the world. And so I was very influenced by performing with my family, absolutely. And then I went, pursued other musical things. I went to college and I started out as a voice major, studied all different kinds of music. But I'll tell you, I was also, I realized when I went to Israel and I spent time there when I was already an adult, I realized what I hadn't been exposed to musically. And that is, I hadn't been exposed to the Persian part of my family history. Like, not at all. It's a very long and kind of, it's a particularly interesting story that if you'd like to hear this podcast that my sister and I created called The Nightingale of Iran, that we tell this story. Even though my father was Iranian, my grandfather Iranian, and very, very famous musicians, both of them. My grandfather was one of the most famous singers of Persian classical music in Iran in the 1950s and 60s. He was a religious Jew. And Muslims adored my grandfather. He was a radio star. And when he would sing on the radio, the entire country would practically shut down once a week. And so here I have this, very, very famous grandfather singing Persian classical music. My father in Iran became a teen idol, a pop star for, the year before he left for the United States. And even though I was very informed by music, both of my parents are musicians, I didn't get exposed to anything in terms of Persian identity. And so that is what I was not exposed to, and that is what I had on my own to kind of dig into and find teachers who would teach me this part of my heritage that I was not exposed to. And that's a big part of what we talk about in the podcast. And I think that really influenced me to become an anthropologist. It influenced my academic work, and going to Israel to study this movement of young Mizrahim who were searching for their own roots influenced me. So I think these are all pieces of my academic work, my musical work, which ultimately came to become very Middle Eastern, studying my Middle Eastern Jewish roots. So I think I am influenced not only by what I was exposed to, but what I realized I hadn't been exposed to.
So as you said, you came from a long line of musicians and cantors. So your work stretches and reclaims traditions for music and performance. How do you understand Judaism as a path, something that is inherited but also reimagined, especially through the arts?
Yeah, well, I'm an anthropologist. So I know that culture and religion are not static. They're constantly changing. And so I would say Judaism is like, every other kind of religion and also aspect of culture that's constantly shifting. And so I think, of course, people are reimagining their different forms of Judaism and not necessarily practicing the exact same ways that their parents practice. It's very dynamic, Judaism, and how people practice it, what they choose to keep from what their parents taught them, and what they want to kind of reinvent for themselves. And I study that in my work on Mizrahim in Israel and also now in the United States. And I think also live that as someone who has reclaimed different aspects of Jewish tradition. Like I grew up in a very Ashkenazi environment where I lived in the conservative Ashkenazi world. I learned to chant from the Torah in an Ashkenazi style. And when I became older, and I had already studied Persian classical music, I decided I wanted to learn how to chant from the Torah in the way that my father knew how, but had never taught me. And that is how he did it in Iran, in the Persian style. And so I learned to chant Torah in that way. So there I was reclaiming and reinventing my own Jewish upbringing. And I see people doing this all the time.
So you have written and performed extensively on Mizrahi identity. And what do you think about this, I don't know if the word conflict is the best word, you can correct me, this conflict between Mizrahi culture and Ashkenazi culture in the Israeli society, in the Israeli reality. I know that today things are way better than they were in the first years, the first decades of Israel's existence, but still we still have this barrier between what Israel claims to be. Is it a Western country or a Middle Eastern country? And Mizrahi culture is a Middle Eastern culture. So what's your view about it?
Yeah, I mean, it would be very difficult for me to crystallize my views, because I have many on this subject, since obviously I've thought about it a lot. But I think that there's no question, as you kind of alluded to, that these conflicts still very much exist in Israeli society. And you can see it actually, all throughout the, the crisis that Israel is having in terms of democracy, because some of the issues that those who are trying to kind of dismantle the way things have been historically is that they feel, many Mizrahim and many Jews of Middle Eastern and North African background feel that they haven't had power and they haven't had a say, and that they haven't had a fair share in many ways, and they're correct in many regards, and in terms of having their traditions being valued. I mean, for so long, religiosity was pushed down, Middle Eastern culture was pushed down, and many of them, not all of them, of course, come from religious backgrounds. So I think many of the issues that that Israel is addressing today still have to do with those divisions in Israeli society between religiosity and ethnic identity. And you can see that they're still very much at the heart of how people politically find themselves in Israel, that things are really stratified along ethnic lines in many ways. Of course, yes, Mizrahim are, you can find them in academia, you can find them in high echelons of society, but it is interesting that the Likud party, for instance, which so much came to power because, in 1977, because of the Mizrahi vote, still has never had Likud a Mizrahi leader.
Yes.
And so these discrepancies still very much exist and have not gone away. And I think it's it'll be a while. I mean, I don't know when they'll go away. I mean, Israel, I think we know, has some bigger problems, but I think those ethnic problems are a big piece of the larger picture.
Do you think Israeli society is afraid to admit that there is a Middle Eastern society, because the majority of the society is Mizrahi?
Yeah.
In the statistics, so they are mixed or purely Mizrahi. The music in Israel today, the popular music, the music that is like the most streamed music today is Mizrahi. So, and personally, I love it. So, is the Israeli society afraid of assuming their part of their identity that is a huge part of their identity?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I mean, I think it has always been the case that Israel sees itself as part of the Western world. And, you know, it's funny, even here, I heard one of my colleagues, you know, refer to Israel as part of the Western world. And look, it was established really in terms of Zionism by European Jews. So I understand why people perceive it that way. You know, Israel has always been a part of Eurovision, for instance. It's very, you know, and there are many other examples like this. So I think that, yes, many Israelis, especially, you know, those who have the largest amount of power, institutional Israelis, have always wanted Israel to be seen as part of the West. And that is in conflict in many ways with where it is on the map. If you look at it, its location. So, yeah, I don't know if it's afraid to admit, but I think it wants very much to be seen as part of the West. But interestingly, in this, you know, new configuration that we're seeing in the Netanyahu government, I'm not sure that they care about the West anymore. Yes. So I don't know. I'm not a political scientist, but there's some big shifts. Israel no longer seems to care about what the rest of the world thinks of it. So this East-West dichotomy might not matter as much.
And thinking about the Jewish community, not only in Israel, but in the world, and I want you to add the Brazilian community, the Brazilian Jewish community, because here I think we have something that could relate to the Israeli Jewish community. That is, of course, here is way smaller than in Israel, but here we have a Sephardi community that is big, a big Sephardi community. We have mixed Jews from Sephardi and Ashkenazi backgrounds, and we have an Ashkenazi community. But the Ashkenazi community is the mainstream community.
Yeah.
They are the leaders in the institutions, the Jewish institutions. And the Sephardi and the mixed ones are not very seen. I don't know if you can understand me.
Oh, I understand you.
They are not really seen. And I teach in a Jewish school as well. And a lot of my students that are from Sephardic backgrounds, they always follow the Ashkenazi, the Ashkenazi traditions, even in school. And I find really odd. I came from a mixed background, but my mom was Sephardi, so I have a lot of my traditions as Sephardi. And I don't know, for me it's odd that people from Sephardi backgrounds follow Ashkenazi traditions. And the school in general, and not only the school that I work for, but other schools, follow Ashkenazi traditions. So in your view, what are the tensions today in the Jewish community, the broader Jewish community in the world, and how Mizrahi Jews are seen, in your opinion? Are they erased, or they are trying to reclaim their place in the global Jewish narrative?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that question. This is actually, I'm going to be speaking to my students about that, and I actually didn't know exactly what the situation was for Brazilian Jews, so I'm glad that you told me that it's similar, because I was going to ask some of my students today. Look, this is what you're describing is Ashkenormativity, which happens, of course, has always been the case in Israel, and has also been the case in the United States as well. And there, I mean, there's a big difference between Israel and the United States, and that is that in Israel, there are so many more Jews from the Middle East and North Africa, Mizrahim, Sephardim, and so it really was kind of obvious that there was a smaller amount of Ashkenazim who had the power over Mizrahim. In the United States, the situation is that the amount of Sephardim and Mizrahim, some people refer to themselves in different ways, Jews of Middle East and North Africa, is much smaller in the United States. And historically, it was almost like they were invisible. And there wasn't really discrimination as in Israel, but it was sort of like invisibility. And so just like you're describing at the schools, at the Jewish day schools, at the Hebrew schools, when they would talk about what Judaism is, that Judaism meant Ashkenazi cultural practices and traditions. And I grew up in that environment myself and didn't even know what I was missing, because in the Hebrew schools, in the Jewish day schools, nobody talked about the experiences of Jews who weren't from the Ashkenazi world. That is changing to a large extent in the United States, slowly, and that is a big piece of what I do, and that is my work, going into synagogues, consulting now with larger cultural and Jewish institutions about how they can include Sephardi and Mizrahi traditions. I'm speaking now to the rabbinical schools and the cantorial schools about how they can integrate much more of the Sephardi, Mizrahi cultural practices, so that rabbis and cantors can be more inclusive and the educators can be more inclusive. So these are all things that are happening very slowly. We're taking baby steps, and those things are beginning to happen. And I don't know, as much about what's happening here in Brazil, but I think, again, I don't know who is leading, or if there are leaders in Brazil who are leading these movements. In one of my students, I have someone from Portugal who is leading movements like that. But I would love to help people. I would love to help Sephardic and Sephardi Mizrahi Jews figure out how to embrace their traditions, because in the United States, we're really just beginning to make a big headway in this regard, but there's so much more to do. And I know that in many places around the world, it's a very similar situation. And we need to get these large institutions to start thinking about ways to be more inclusive.
And what is the role of art in this work, especially women's voices? Did it play in an unsettling or healing place, filling those gaps?
Yeah, well, the arts can be a very, very powerful way. I mean, this is a lot of what I do, of just showing the beauty of what different traditions, the richness of different traditions. And I think that's a perfect example of how you like Mizrahi music. And so, and a lot of Israelis like Mizrahi music, and so it's become really popular. And so those are ways where it's been very easy. If people gradually, their ears become sensitized and accustomed, people will realize, wow, there's beauty here. And it's a great way of kind of opening the door to create, shared interest and knowledge. So the arts, I think, are a very powerful way, and a very obvious way, through music and through food and through dance. Israeli dance is all to Mizrahi music now.
Yes.
And you had another question. What was your other question? You asked me about the arts.
The women's place.
Oh, right. So, so many. I can't say that that's changing everywhere. Like, I grew up in an egalitarian environment. And so, actually, because I grew up in an Ashkenazi egalitarian environment where I was reading Torah and I had the exact same abilities that men did, it was very natural to me when I went towards the Mizrahi world. I was already very comfortable with sacred music and being a part of that. But I can't say that all Sephardi Mizrahi Jews are okay with women, leading. I mean, I do a lot of work as a cantor. And now there are these small pockets of Sephardi Mizrahi Jews who are starting egalitarian communities. And that's actually where I lead High Holidays in New York, in a community called Kanis. And we have Sephardi Mizrahi egalitarian services, and there are only a handful of other ones in the United States. But this is a new trend, is that not only do women want to learn their traditions, but they want to be empowered to lead them also. And so in many cases, women are learning these skills. They want to teach their traditions to their children as well. And that's been really exciting for me to witness and be a part of.
Our podcast is called Preciso, Saber, that in English is I need to know. So we always ask our interviewers, what do you think that we need to know about the subject that we were discussing? So I would like to ask you what our audience needs to know about to honor the complexity of Jewish identity, and especially Mizrahi voices. So in a way that it's not nostalgic, but alive and forward-looking.
Wow. Well, I mean, to continue on what I said, I think people need to be aware of the diversity of the Jewish experience. And so I don't know how much your audience knows about all of these other kinds of Jewish practices, but I can certainly make a little plug for my podcast, The Nightingale of Iran, which I do want people to know, considering all of the news about Israel and Iran right now, that there was this other time in the history of Iran where this little blip in history in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, where Jews and Muslims in Iran were completely integrated, and women were able to be fully integrated in society. So I want people to know about that, and I want people to know about this this particular time that we talk about in the Nightingale of Iran. I want people to know that there is just a wealth of Jewish culture, musically and culturally, and that if they want to seek it out, they can find it, and that even if they didn't, if they didn't learn it growing up, there are still many ways of researching, interviewing your families in order to get more of that information.
And I'll ask you to sing a little bit for us. No problem. Oh. Is edited, so you can get your instruments and sing something for us a little bit.
Get my instrument now?
Yes, if you can.
Oh. Sure. And so I'm going to share a prayer from Jewish tradition. And in Jewish tradition, this particular prayer is sung actually every night as a prayer for protection and peace. And I feel like in the context of the world right now, we can use all of the prayers for protection and peace that we can get. And this particular melody I inherited from my father, and it's his improvisation, and I guess I'm doing my own improvisation on his from Iran. This is Hashkivenu. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu leshalom, ve'hamidenu malkeinu lechaim, ufrotz aleinu sukat shelomecha, ve'tagnenu be'etzah tova milfanecha, ve'hoshienu leman shemecha, ve'agen ba'deinu, ve'aser me'aleinu, oyev dever v'cherem ve'ra'av ve'yagon, ve'aser satan milefaneinu u'me'achareinu, u'b'tzel kenafecha tashireinu, ki el shomreinu l'shalom me'ata ve'ad olam, baruch atah Adonai shomer amo Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ha'ad.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for really this honor of hearing you and our audience to hear you sing. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
For your generosity to talk with us and to sing for us.
Of course, thank you.
Thank you so much, Galeet. E muito obrigada a você que acompanhou até aqui essa conversa emocionante e imperdível. Continue acompanhando os conteúdos da Academia Judaica nas nossas redes sociais. O nosso podcast vai ao ar a cada 15 dias às quartas-feiras. Então também siga o podcast no YouTube, nas plataformas de áudio que você preferir e continue seguindo então os nossos materiais. Eu sou Karina e até a próxima.